Welcome everyone to today's AACI webinar on EMR to EDC technology. We're absolutely thrilled to have such a distinguished panel representing expertise across data management, IT, and clinical research operations. I think together they bring a 360-degree view of what it takes to secure, implement, scale, and sustain EMR to EDC solutions across academic sites and our industry sponsors. Before we begin, just a quick note on logistics. We encourage you to use the chat to submit questions throughout the session. We'll be monitoring that and try to address as many of those as we move through the discussion as possible. Just a quick reminder to keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, just so the rest of us continue to hear the speakers. And then we have reserved the last 20 minutes for an open Q&A. So during that time, feel free to use the raise your hand feature in Zoom if you'd like to ask a live question. If we can advance to the speaker panel, please. In today's session, we will follow source to EDC process from the beginning to the end. We'll begin with Nick Farley, Director of the Clinical Trials Account Services at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, who will start us off by discussing securing IT resources and navigating governance, which are foundational to any successful integration. Ashish Narayan, Associate Dean for Research Technology at Icahn School of Medicine, will walk us through the implementation milestones, including strategies for going live using a startup mentality. Fran Brogan, Director of Clinical Research Operations at the Herbert Irving Comprehensive Cancer Institute, will share the end user experience with Archer, focusing on training and ease of use from the site level. Renata and Anna from Memorial Sloan Kettering will highlight scaling across IIT portfolios. They will discuss adverse events for investigator-initiated research and really focus on expanding the use of Archer across multiple sponsors and multiple multi-center studies. Advance, please. Finally, from the sponsor perspective, Michelle Sample, VP of Late Stage Development Oncology at AstraZeneca, and Amy Kramer, Director of Data Acquisition at J&J, will discuss balancing site prioritizations, scaling studies, and aligning site engagement strategies with data-driven outcomes. We are very excited for a rich and practical discussion that reflects both implementation realities and strategies for collaboration and scalability. Before we jump into the content, I invite Chen from IgniteData to share a brief overview on the Archer platform.
Thanks so much, Derek. Appreciate that. And thank you, AACI, for having us. Hello, everyone. My name is Chinmay Rapuli. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces on the line, several new ones as well. My goal over just the next 2 to 3 minutes is to give a quick foundation of what IgniteData's Archer platform is, especially if you're hearing about us for the first time. Nothing too deep, just the basics. And then as the session goes on, you'll hear from our sites and sponsor partners who will paint a more complete picture based on their real-world use in their own words. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, Archer is a cloud-based application, sits in between your EHR and the destination EDC, completely agnostic on both ends. So on the EHR side, we've done extensive work with Epic sites. We have about 20 years of Epic experience on my team, and are in the Epic showroom. We're also in the Cerner marketplace for you to be able to download directly. We also work with smaller EHRs like CureMD and several others, as long as they're HL7 FHIR enabled. On the EDC side, same story. So we're agnostic. We have live integrations with Medidata and Viva, and are actively building out additional EDC connectors to support both industry and IIT trials at your site. And then from the security standpoint, while Archer can be launched from a custom data warehouse like at Memorial Sloan Kettering, Archer is typically launched directly from your EHR using single sign-on. That means no separate logins or passwords. And we're very happy to share and are very used to sharing detailed security documentation, data flow diagrams with their IT office so they can see exactly how we move data, what we move data to, and the limitations and access controls that are in place. Next slide. From a cost perspective, all deployment, ongoing maintenance fees are entirely covered by our wonderful sponsor partners for industry trials. So you as a site will never be presented an invoice by IgniteData for setup, maintenance, travel, etc. for sponsored studies. We are also in active discussions to activate NIH grant-funded studies on Archer at no cost to the participating sites. I know that's a high priority topic for many of our site partners, so we will definitely keep you posted as that develops. For IITs, there is a small cost model to cover our expenses, but we're always flexible based on your commercial portfolio. As we know, budgets at sites are very tight. Our business model is certainly not built around charging sites directly. And lastly, sponsors fund Archer because it's mutually beneficial, particularly in reducing source data verification. I'm sure our sponsor partners will expand on this topic during their portion. And last slide for me. So a quick but important note around data privacy. So IgniteData does not store, retain, persist, move your data offshore for manual transcription. Your data stays your data. So we exist only as a data processor. We like to say we're laser focused on EHR to EDC automation. So we're not trying to sell you a suite of add-ons. Our mission is simple. It's to make data transfer for clinical research as efficient as possible for our sites and sponsors. So with that, I will hand things over to Nick from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute.
Thank you so much, Jen. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here with you all today, given that we actually just went live this morning with installing the IgniteData Archer app in our Epic production instance. So next slide, please. So yeah, as I mentioned, we just went live this morning. We haven't yet sent any real data for our first study, so I'm excited to hopefully report back once we have some experience doing that. But I thought it might be helpful for folks to see kind of our timeline of how long that took for us to get through the process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the complexity we have on our side and challenges obtaining approval to move forward with using the IgniteData Archer tool. But once we had approvals in place, that was September 8th, it's really been just about a month overall to complete the process of putting it in our non-production instance, completing all of the required testing, and then getting it fully installed and live as of this morning. Next slide. So we have a bit of a complex structure. Our NCI designated cancer center is a consortium of multiple hospitals. So I'm here on behalf of Dana-Farber today, but our cancer center also encompasses Mass General Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Boston Children's, and Beth Israel Deaconess. And because of that, we actually have 3 different instances of Epic that are used for research within our cancer center. And here at Dana-Farber, we actually use 2 of those 3 ourselves. A lot of our adult research is in the Mass General and Brigham instance of Epic, and then a lot of our pediatric research and those activities are supported by our collaboration with Boston Children's and their instance of Epic. And so one of the things that was important to us when we started embarking down this road was to start small. There just wasn't a feasible path to kind of do this on a large scale right off the bat. And so we decided we were going to do a single study proof of concept at Dana-Farber only, and use that as kind of a proving grounds for us, and then to decide, what our next steps are, and potentially expanding the use of these EMR to EDC tools. Since we share an instance of Epic with Mass General and the Brigham, we actually rely on their Epic resources to make any changes to our EMR. And so while there is a Dana-Farber team that liaisons with their Epic folks in order to make changes, we don't have the ability to make those changes directly ourselves. And so one of our biggest challenges was figuring out, having not done something like this before, exactly what approvals we would need from each of the institutions and who were the people that we needed to talk to in order to get those approvals. And there were some cases where we had to get approvals on the Dana-Farber side and then get a very similar approval from the Mass General and Brigham side in order to be able to move forward. So that was one of our biggest obstacles, and I'm going to highlight here on the next slide kind of a specific thing that came up that we were able to work through with the IgniteData team. And that's regarding the FHIR integration. So we don't use the structured Epic adverse event data within for clinical research, at least not consistently. And it was not something that we had included in our initial scope for our first study, kind of proof of concept. Again, kind of that start small mentality. And yet when we looked at the Archer app and when our Epic team was going through the approval process, they noticed that the app that is available in the store is scoped to include API calls for adverse event data. And they pointed out to us and to the IgniteData team that Epic might charge us for certain types of API calls. And so they were concerned about the financial impact of that, even if no data was retrieved through those requests, that even just attempting to make a call and request adverse event data could result in a financial impact on us. So the Epic team at first had requested that that level of permission and access to the adverse event APIs be removed from the Archer application before it was installed. This kind of gets into how Epic works a little bit. But one of the things that I learned through this process, because I'm not an expert on Epic, is that we're very limited at the institution side on what we can do to control how much the app can access. That it's really on the app development side that it creates the scope for those client IDs. And so I know Epic is actively working on improving that. But in the interim, we were able to work with the IgniteData team, first of all, to review all of those resource calls in detail with our Epic team to make sure that we were all on the same page. And then we ended up revising our agreement to include protections against any costs due to any unapproved API calls that might be made if there was a configuration mistake or something else that unintentionally had happened with the installation. By doing those two things, we were able to obtain approval and move forward with the installation. I have one more slide after this. And so just really quick, some things that worked well for us. We did our contracting and our security and privacy approvals in parallel, which saved us a lot of time. The IgniteData team was incredibly helpful, giving us a blueprint for all the steps and how long each step should take. That saved us a lot of planning and project management time on our side. Also, their responsiveness and their availability to jump into those meetings and talk face to face with the Epic team to help resolve those questions and get us through those hurdles wasn't just crucial for us to be able to move forward. As Chin mentioned, they have a lot of experience on their team with former Epic staff and have worked extensively with Epic. And so it really was a low lift on our end once we had the approvals in place and an understanding of what was needed. And we're currently still wrapping up end user training on our end, but the Ignite team was able to give us a very clear and concise training plan for our end users to help get them ready to start using the tool. So thank you. I'm excited to hopefully share some updates once we start sending data. I'll turn it over to Ashish.
Thanks, Nick. Congratulations. Pretty impressive what you guys done in such a short time. So everyone, Ashish Narayan here. I'm the Associate Dean for Research Technology at Mount Sinai. Work pretty closely with Tharika. And really excited to be here. And it's a really important project for us because this addresses a major challenge, a huge gap between, having data flow automatically between the EDC sponsors, EDC and our EHR systems. Next slide. So like Nick mentioned, some of the things are, the way we approached was we kept this we approached this project in a very non-traditional way, right? Unlike the enterprise project that you're all aware of in your large institutions, we kept with a startup mentality, we started calling it like that. Because right from the very beginning, we had a very early engagement. We want to make sure all the collaborators are together on calls, even right from the very beginning when we're doing the product evaluation. We had, along with the business unit, we had the research ITs, the central IT teams, the Epic, the cybersecurity, so that all questions were answered in a much a quicker way rather than going through series of committees and multiple meetings. We had a very light structure for this, kept the team flat, no hierarchy, no project committees, quick decision making, focused on agility over bureaucracy. And I would definitely highlight that in a project of this sort. At the same time, the vendor, our partners, IgniteData has been terrific in terms of providing support and answering our question in a very quick manner. So that was a huge win for us. We also did follow the prioritization framework in which we focused on, what's our return on investment, what the ROI is, kept, growth focused mindset and early escalations. There were, the rule was if anything you see something, say right away. If you foresee something could be brewing and could be coming up, please raise your hand so we can get to the right escalation path, escalate it to the various teams and get it resolved as soon as possible. We also did early communication with our Cancer Institute. We, sent out early communication around why we're doing that, the wow factor attached to it. Not just as it's like any other technical project, but the transformational impact this will have on our clinical trials, right? So everybody felt there's a skin in the game and want to be part of this. So that was really important for us as well. And again, open communication. Our governance structure was set. We had just anything call out. We had real time, decision making, and also visibility with the stakeholders. We had huddles on demand. We're meeting every week, sometimes multiple times a week, depending on what the focus area is. Next slide. So this is our, slide that shows our implementation timeline. We started towards the end of April, and we went live the first week of August, I'd say. And, it's a quick slide. It just talks about, our kickoff meeting happened. We identified what the pilot studies would be. Of course, we kept it like an MVP mindset where we say, okay, let's just do the minimal proof of concepts, one pilot study at a time. And so in May, we figured out all the data mapping, the code validation, demoed the product to the investigators. June was pretty much all the technical lift of, web application development, working very closely with IgniteData folks. And, do all the deployment in the non-production environment. So we have test environment and the production environment. We did on, first on test, and make sure everything's working, testing, integrated, and then we, in the month of July, we have a very rigorous process whenever we go live within Mount Sinai. No matter how much of a startup mentality you have to make sure we go through all the approval chain to make sure anything you move to production. So we got the CAB approval, and the July was pretty much testing, making sure the data transfer is correct. And there we go. We went live in August first week. I think we went live on the August 7th, and we're now up to, I think, 4 studies or so, or 5th in the pipeline. We're making great progress on that. Next slide, please. I guess this is the last one. So this pretty much, talks about today, tomorrow, and future state. What we have today, we kept it, minimal, viable product focus. The data domain is currently being transferred via the Archer at Mount Sinai, focused on labs, vitals, demographics. Soon we'll be embarking on adding more data capabilities with medical history and medication. And then the future roadmap would be, accommodating other sorts of data that are listed here. So that's in short our journey on this application, from intake to completion. And we're really happy to, help and guide if needed, and to work with you to answer your questions. Thank you.
We can advance.
Oh, there's one more.
And Fran, we'll ask you to join us.
Sure. Hi, I'm Fran Brogan. I'm the Director of Clinical Research Operations at Columbia University's Herbert Irving Comprehensive Cancer Center. Say that 10 times fast. Next slide. So as with the others, we had to go through multiple layers of approval because we have the university, we have the hospital, we had our procurement office, we had Epic, we had our privacy office. So we had to collaborate with everybody. And just getting to know who we had a contact with, we had a contact with the university IT, hospital IT. So I will say it was a struggle at the beginning in getting everybody to communicate. But as it got rolling, it got better. It did take us about 6 months, but that's good for Columbia to get something approved. Next slide. So even though it did take a long process in getting it approved, once we got it set up and we have it in Epic, so it's single sign-on, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to work with Ignite. Emmy on training was wonderful. If we have any problems, she is always there for our team and able to help us get through any struggles. And we want to implement it on multiple other studies, but what's happening now is we're going through multiple layers of approval again. So we're trying to figure out how can we stop that and just get it approved and get it going without having to go through the similar process again, because it's already approved. It's already been vetted by IT, by privacy, by Epic, by all the teams I discussed before. We started about 3 months ago, and sorry, I wanted my data coordinator to be here, but she couldn't attend. But what she said, she doesn't get queries for entering the wrong information anymore on labs. So, taking that time and giving that time back to her to work on other stuff is truly amazing. Next slide. Again, our experience, it's very user friendly. It transfers the data with ease. There's no manual data entries. We're using it for the same for labs, vital signs, and demographics. And collaborating with Ignite has been wonderful. If any of you know me, I'm skeptical about different sites and different experiences, but this has been truly wonderful, and it actually, I think, is going to help everybody in that getting that data. You don't have to worry about getting data submitted in time, because this really helps you do that. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Francis. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Anna Petruno. I'm a product manager at MSK, and I'm here with Renata Ponchal, the director of product management at MSK, and we're really excited to share with you today what MSK's experience has been with actually scaling Archer, and going from pilot phase to actually scaling it across the portfolio. Next slide, please. So MSK began its journey with Ignite back in 2023. We began piloting Archer in November 2023 with one investigator-initiated trial as well as one externally funded study. And the goal at that stage was really to get familiar with the process for setting up a study and to collect preliminary time savings and end user satisfaction metrics. After kicking off those initial pilots, we also performed a time-controlled validation study to more robustly measure the workflow efficiency gains. And so we selected 5 IITs and put together a random list of subjects, visits, and forms for each of those studies and asked CRCs to enter data manually within the 1 hour for 1 hour. And then a week later, do the same thing using Archer for 1 hour. And we just asked them to enter as much data as possible within that time frame. We found that data entry with Archer was actually 58% faster, 99% less error prone, and preferred by our site staff when compared to manual data entry. And so this really gave us a solid set of data that we combined with the learnings from the pilot studies to go back to leadership and show leadership that this workflow has a lot of value and is actually worth scaling. And I'm happy to share that all of that data actually was submitted for publication, and as of last Friday was accepted. I have in there the citation on the slide. So hopefully other sites can use this as evidence when they go back to their leadership to prove that this workflow actually works. And so to date, we've actually enabled 37 studies on Archer. We've worked with 17 services within MSK. And based on the studies that we have in progress and those that are still in queue, we expect to be well over 50 studies before the end of this year. Next slide, please. To date, MSK CRCs have transferred over 74,000 data points using Archer. Again, this is across our IITs and across externally funded studies. 81% of the studies that have this enabled have actually used it at least once. Other studies are just waiting for subjects to accrue and data to be generated. And we have 47 CRCs registered to the system. Just to give you a little bit of context, we have over 400 CRCs in our institution, so we have a lot more work to do, but this is definitely ramping up across our portfolio. And we've gotten lots of great feedback and metrics from our sponsors as well. So on top of the time savings and the reduction in errors, what we've heard from sponsors is that they're actually getting data faster. So that time between when the data was available in the EDC to when it's entered in the EDC has decreased for data points that were entered with Archer. And we collect user satisfaction metrics for any of our CRCs using the workflow, and they do report that the system is easy to use, easy to learn, and that they prefer it over manual data entry. So lots of great metrics to prove the value for this workflow. Next slide, please. So how we scaled this across MSK, we are a very large institution, and this required a lot of coordination across multiple teams within our institution that support clinical research. So to bring awareness to our CRCs and our study teams, we participate in regular demos where we share what progress we've made, just some general information about the technology, how we're scaling it, how we're adding it to studies. We also attend regular internal meetings with study teams. In terms of the training and support, we developed a self-guided training model to sort of replace any live training that was needed for our IITs. So this includes, this requires CRCs to read through a user guide that contains details about the workflow and also frequently asked questions. And then they need to complete an assessment to evaluate their understanding of the workflow. In terms of how we identify studies, particularly IITs, we work really closely with our colleagues within the department that manage the EDC for our IITs. And so we can identify studies really early on in their activation process and ensure that those databases are built with any EHR to EDC requirements, if there are any. So we build those early on, avoid any migrations, which delay things, obviously, and sort of prioritize those based on our capacity, and then work through them collectively with IgniteData. And then in terms of contracting, so this is most relevant for our externally sponsored studies. We worked really closely with our legal team to try to streamline this approach as much as possible. So we have templates that we use for any work order or CTA level amendments. But ultimately what we want to see is this language built into master agreements. And so our legal team is exploring this with multiple sponsors. And hopefully this just helps avoid delays as much as possible moving forward. Next slide, please. More recently, we've started enabling the Archer workflow at partnering sites participating in our multi-center investigator-initiated trials. We see this as a very important step towards consistency across sites and how they enter data. And so our approach really is to look back at the 37 studies we've worked on so far, identify those that are IITs, which ones are multi-center, and then from there work with any sites that are already contracted with EgniteData to activate the workflow for them. And right now we've identified 2 studies and sites that we've just kicked off activities for. So we're really excited to learn what it takes to scale beyond the MSK walls and then have that help inform future multi-center rollouts. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, we're now expanding the types of data that we can transfer electronically. So we began piloting the transfer of adverse events for one of our IITs in August, which was really exciting. At MSK, this is entered in a structured format. It's entered into Epic's adverse event module, and having it in that structured, consistent format allows it to flow more seamlessly through Archer. So that's a great benefit to using that module. One of the other major benefits that our study team has seen so far with using Archer, specifically for AEs, is the ability to quickly identify updates to the data. So this is a little like, it's not really relevant for labs and vitals so much, but on AEs where there would be a grade change potentially or a resolved date after an initial transfer, really identifying what changes exist in the data and abstracting that information and then entering that into the EDC is what is most time consuming. So the fact that Archer highlights that for the user and then the user can quickly transfer any updates has been significant. So we'll be wrapping up that pilot phase soon. We're going to reflect on any metrics we collected, share learnings with others, and then eventually scale up to more studies before the end of the year. And finally, we're exploring how to get performance status transferred through Archer. So at MSK, this is stored in unstructured data and is very time consuming for our study teams to abstract. So surfacing and structuring it in Archer has a lot of value for our teams and also really sets the runway for any other data sets that are also stored as in unstructured data. And I'll just close by saying that MSK's strategy around building scalability and sustainability is really owed in large part to EgniteData, and really their openness around what they can do today and what they're working on for the future and their ability to collaborate. So I think others have mentioned this before, but they're very open to collaborating, and we at MSK are a very opinionated bunch and have lots of ideas on how to improve things. And Ignite has always been very open to hearing our feedback and incorporating that into their processes and also products. So that's been great for us in our collaboration. And with that, I will pass it over to Renata for some final words.
Happy to. We can stay on that slide. I just have a few things to close and give some more context. All this data that we collected has been something that we have established really early on, from the pilot initial steps there 2 years ago to really inform where we're going to go. Just like Anna said and how she closed there, that this partnership has been critical for us to continue to move this forward, and not just with Ignite, but also with our sponsors, who I know we're going to be hearing soon. The ability to be able to push the boundaries and make changes in our space was really critical to be done with partnerships with like AstraZeneca and J&J to be able to really do that and move this along. We are very invested in the investigator-initiated trials now, but this has not stopped the work that we have been doing with the sponsors. So we're still open and continue to do that a lot. So it truly is a synergistic push to make changes in that space, and that has been so important to us. Our leadership has given us truly full support and sees the vision and sees the data that we have been able to abstract from all of this and be able to report on. And that has given them even more confidence that that is the way to go, that is now the way that we operate and run our clinical trials and Memorial Sloan Kettering, because that is the way of not the future, but of the present, right? So being able to do this now is really opening up so many opportunities and new things that we can do. This milestone that we have now with the diverse events, and then be able to also expand to unstructured data, like for us, performance data is also is a really sought after milestone that we really look forward to really being able to again measure more and understand how it goes, and then move beyond the structured data that we have used. And again, this really comes with all the support and the vision really that we have been able to execute, and that's really so exciting. Happy to answer some more questions later.
Anna and
Yeah.
Renata, there's a question in the chat for you. Does the unstructured data continue on its normal duration of data entry?
I'm just looking for the question again.
Yeah, I'll read it one more time. Does
Yeah,
the
thank you.
unmapped or non-mapped unstructured data, I think is the intent there, continue on its normal duration of data entry?
If I'm understanding correctly, so we map that data and we're using that's for our diverse events, if that's the question. We're really using the data that is on a continuum, right? Diverse events are assessed as a continuum, not as just a time point, and that is mapped as such. And being able to leverage that is this milestone that I'm talking about. That we're able to now not just send data that is just time point driven, but is truly a continuum. That's what we are working on. I'm happy
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
We'll invite Michelle and following her, Amy, for the last couple of minutes, and then we'll open it up. There's a lot of activity in the chat, so we'll have some discussion around that, and hopefully there'll be additional conversation from the members.
Hey, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about AstraZeneca and our efforts with IgniteData. You can go to the next slide. I will say that for us in AstraZeneca, we really wanted to make sure that we looked at the way to make it easier for sites to participate in clinical trials. We know the burden at sites to be able to participate and not have a lot of manual efforts going on with the staff that you have at your institutions. And then from a science standpoint, the faster we get data in-house, the earlier we can look at signals and we can look at how we treat patients with cancer. So those were our two driving forces to look at ways that we support the trial and the implementation at the site level. And so we started out with a pilot project. We had some interesting conversations with IgniteData, and we realized that that was a company that we definitely could work with. And the first was to really identify key objectives and what we believe would be success criteria. We really wanted to also define the clear scope and the delivery window, so timelines. How do we test out that this is actually a EMR to EDC could actually work with us with AZ and IgniteData? And then we mobilized a small team, really focused on the feasibility of us moving forward with this. The next thing we did, and I was one of the leaders that was definitely a champion for us to explore technology, again, to make it easier for the sites to work with us and to ensure that we have the patient data. So we secure support. I secure support along with IgniteData and a lot of meetings with our senior leaders around the commitment for AZ's leadership team to make this happen and to begin to work towards the technology that was behind us being able to have that data transferred in. We included some of the sites and study champions. We started talking to sites that really were very interested in us participating in our first pilots, and MSKC was absolutely one of those that we talked to about trying out and having this be a platform for them. And we also had other conversations with other hospitals. And then we started providing tailored awareness sessions and improving user confidence and readiness for us to be able to do not only from IgniteData to the hospital's electronic medical records, but making sure that that transfer was appropriate as it came into AstraZeneca. If you go to the next slide. And then what we did was we built our foundation for scale. So once we knew that the technology was working and we knew that we could bring that data in-house and that we had visibility to that data, we began to partner with the right technology vendors, and obviously that was IgniteData. We explored other vendors that were out there that could potentially provide some similar types of technology, but it was really IgniteData, progressive way in their strategic roadmap that made us feel very comfortable that that was the platform that we could work with. And again, they were already working with a lot of the hospitals that were participating in our clinical trials. And so it was definitely the right strategy for us. And so we developed the right processes approaching onboarding new sites and new studies. So once we established the hospitals that were working with IgniteData, we really wanted to make sure we looked at all the trials that could potentially be placed at those institutions or that they already were starting some of our trials. So it was across the board that we looked at our oncology portfolio and whether those hospitals were already participating in some of the additional studies. And as they built on the IgniteData platform, we were able to add those additional studies to any of the institutions working with IgniteData. And that was a plus for us and the institution, because obviously the more studies you have on a singular platform, you can continue to build upon that as we know will go forward. And then the impact and ongoing growth. We continue to expand EMR to EDC adoption to major global research centers. Those centers were centers that obviously we had some of our trials with, or we are planning to institute additional trials at those sites. And so far, we deliver 70% reduction in manual data entry. And again, that workload is really impacting on the site level. And we really wanted to be conscious of that. But we also achieved 80% fewer data queries. And that's also important, because when you look at staff having to answer queries, that was something that they would not have to do. And it really boosted our data quality and our efficiencies. And also enable a reduction in source data verification. So not only from a site perspective, not only from what I said in terms of expediting our delivery of our trials, it was reduction in terms of our CRAs having to do source data verification. And the long and short of it is, and it's my last real comment here, is that all of this helps accelerate research timelines. And that's what we really want to be able to do. We want to accelerate research timelines, both from a hospital standpoint, but certainly from the patient standpoint. And this is one technology that I've been trying to work towards for a very, very long time. And really quickly was a CRA, was a study coordinator. And I kept thinking it has to be a better way than having to repeat information in two different systems. And so luckily we're there with IgniteData, and I look forward to working with them and the institutions further in bringing more data and more structured data over from the electronic health records into EDC, because I believe that's going to be even more of an impact in the way we continue to accelerate research timelines. Thank you very much for your time. Next slide.
You know what I love about EHR to sponsor and working with Ignite and hearing from everyone is we're all on the same page and working towards the same goals. How do we make this easier? How do we do this more efficiently? And how, most importantly, do we do this together? So thank you very much, everyone, for letting me come and share the journey that myself and my team at Johnson & Johnson Innovation Medicines has been working on EHR to sponsor. Next slide, please. So I use the word journey because I think it's really important when we talk to people to level set. We all have those folks that once they hear you can do it, they're like magically think we can get all data at all time, at all sites. And that's not a reality. And that's why it requires all of us to work on this together. So this is a build slide. If you can go click one ahead. So at J&J, we went a little bit more ambitious. In our first study in 2023, if you can click so it shows up, it was, thank you. We called this a pioneer study. This was not a pilot in our minds. This was a true study that was a live study, regulated clinical trial with a site. And so we were so encouraged by that in 2024, keep clicking, we were able to start to work with what I call early adopters and learn a lot from working with you, things that we could do better, ways that internally we needed to do things differently. And then now that we're in 2025, if you can move to the next dot, we've moved out of innovation and we're moving into what we call base business. And so really expanding on our sites and on the data. And of course, the Holy Grail, next dot, is that next year we'll be moving this totally into our business as usual, not just within our team that's responsible in data management, data acquisition, but also in our operations groups, our study teams, the entire organization. And the goal, of course, one more click, is to get to where we can have as much of the data possible, recognizing we will never have all of the data. There will always be new data elements we'll need to collect and reach any sites that are interested in doing EHR to sponsor. There are factors that we have learned that are the keys to success. And if you can click there, there's really 4 of them. The data standardization, the site readiness, and I think You guys know better than we do, and you've spoken so eloquently to it. Vendor capability. And then the last is pharma readiness. So if we click to the next slide, please. I think we're all looking at the same data elements, specifically following the US CDI. But when we talk about data elements, there's sometimes data elements that our internal teams want to have because they feel that they're really important for patient safety. And then there's data elements that you want because they're also important for patient safety. And they may be ones that we have to collect more often. For instance, labs. And how easy is it to mistype a number? So we're really interested in understanding what data domains are important to you. Next slide. So this journey to adoption and site scaling, where do I see that we are at J&J? Well, you see the girl dancing alone in the field. I feel like that was me back in 2015 when I did this for my first time. But I see now it's not just me that it was doing this. We were all doing this back then. And we had to jump over that chasm. And that was the hardest part. That was the part where I wasn't sure we were going to make it through and make EHR to sponsor an actual reality. Where we're at now is at this tipping point where we have the innovators, we have the early adopters, and we need to get that 10 to 15% of the early majority in order to really make this EHR to sponsor adoption tip. And that's where we're at J&J. Next slide. So technology. This was a really important part of this. Having done this 3 times, third time's the charm, we learned a lot. And the first was we had done a lot of analysis of different vendors, but then we took a step back and we started asking our site partners, what vendor do you want to use? And this really helped us to align on using Ignite. That's how we were able to come with this. And then, of course, we wanted to make sure that the current data flows from the EHR with a site staff in the loop. I think these are all the same things that we're all working towards. It has to meet our J&J requirements. We can't have multiples of these. It just won't work. We need to have a few vendors that we can work and to have vendors that meet gaps. So right now, our enterprise contract is with IgniteData. That is the vendor that we have available, and we'll continue to work with Ignite and expand, and excited about that. And then, of course, always compliant with J&J and regulatory requirements. So the last one, pharma readiness. This was the one that I don't think I had realized how much there was going to need to be done here. I now have a team of 7 dedicated individuals within data acquisition. And these folks have just recently been onboarded. But it takes more than that. It takes legal, it takes contracting, it takes our teams that are responsible for our sites, it takes our teams that are responsible for the studies if there needs to be a change to the ICF. This is a very large group of people. And so because this is a very large group of people, I wanted to show you the scale at which we've started to grow. And this is old. This is from September 3rd. But you can see globally where we're at with IgniteData. You can see the number of studies. You can see the number of sites. And you can also see the number of implementations. And I just want to let you know all of these numbers have grown drastically since the beginning of the month when our team has come on board. So very excited to be working with Ignite, and those of you who are on the call, interested in working with more of you that are on the call and collaborating together to make this really a reality. Let's get that 10 to 15% to get to that tipping point together.
Great. Thank you, Amy. That was a wonderful close to the session today. I appreciate your perspective, and certainly knowing that J&J is fully committed to this direction and innovation. I think we'll open it up now to questions. There's been some activity in the chat, so I'll bring one question forward. There was discussion about whether the IRB was involved in approving the EMR to EDC technology or if they required any modifications to the consent form. So I'll just open that up to all of the panel speakers.
Yeah, not
I
much
can
to
respond
be on.
from
Go ahead, Anna.
floor is yours.
We have consulted with IRB in the very beginning. That was part of, again, the leadership support to be able to consult with everyone. And they were very comfortable with what we're doing and the ability that Archer has to not hold on to any data, that what was in there already covered that. So the patients are informed that their data is being collected and sent to a EDC, either the sponsor one or our own, if it's an IIT, and the information there was sufficient. So they're informed of that. It's just that the methodology didn't require any changes in the language.
Right. We informed our IRB, and at first they thought we were going to have to make major changes to our consent. And then in the end, they said what we had was good. And so no changes were made. And that was the easiest part.
Oh, the irony, huh? And then I think a question for Amy and Michelle. Is anyone talking about a menu approach to supporting multiple networks and pipes to meet the sites where they are? I think this is more specifically around multi-center studies across, a number of compounds and sites.
So, Michelle, I guess I'm going to just make sure I clarify this. So, are you asking, is the question asking, are we going to have multiple EHR to EDC vendors? Is that the question that they want to ask us?
Joe, I'll invite you to clarify your question if you're still on.
Hey, Amy. Yes, that's the answer. Or that's the question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So right now what we're doing at J&J is really focusing on our partnership with Ignite. If the site has another vendor they want to use, we collect that information and document it. But we have to work on our pharma readiness. And you guys are way ahead of us. I hate to admit this at the sites. We have a lot of work to do. We have SOPs to write. We have people that need to be hired and trained. There is no training for this. We're not typically used to working with what I'll call clinical research informatics teams. So for now, this is where how we're working is using Ignite and maximizing the partnership that we have with Ignite. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to add to that.
So just to add to that, we are primarily working with IgniteData, but we are exploring two other companies that have offered some similar technology that we're evaluating. And, as that evaluation unfolds, we'll determine whether or not there is another opportunity. And this is coming from a multi-center perspective. And so once that evaluation is done, we'll determine if there will be additional work with those other vendors.
And I'll just comment from the Mount Sinai perspective, like sort of what Amy described, we're partnering closely with Archer platform and IgniteData for all of the reasons I think you sort of heard today, but also from a data protection and resource intensity perspective. We cannot go through this process with, 6 or 7 different vendors every time a new study or sponsor wants to present us with a potential. So we did a lot. I think we spent a year and a half assessing the market and tools out there before sort of deciding, where we're going to be today. Question for Fran. How has the adoption of EMR to EDC technology changed the roles of the clinical research coordinators, data managers, and clinical teams? And what lessons can we all sort of take to optimize operations without disrupting our sort of current environments while we, integrate this new technology?
Sure. It hasn't changed their role. It's made their role better. So the data coordinator, so our CRCs do data in when needed. So our data coordinators are the one who are primarily responsible for this. So this has given them time back to work on queries for other studies that don't use systems like this, and get to other stuff and data entry within our contract, what's in our contracts, which we never meet. So it's given time back. It hasn't taken away anything from them. It's given them time back.
Anna, Renata, do you have additional comments on that?
Yeah, we experience the same, and it frees up for better work, for more efficient work, to support our clinical team, to support our participants in the trials, right? That's what this time now is being repurposed to have a better conduct of clinical trials, and that's what we're experiencing here. So.
And I guess
I think I think when the EMR to EDC first came out, it was it's going to take away people's positions, it's going to take away people's time, people they'll be assigned to do other things. It's no, they're being able to do other things in their current role.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, given the workforce shortage and some of the financial constraints that academic centers are facing, it's important for us to evolve. And our coordinators want to do meaningful work. And, again, many of them have grown up with lots of technology fully integrated into their life. And so they can't really comprehend this copy, paste, enter sort of the concept that we've created. So I think it gives them an opportunity, again, to be more patient-facing, to really focus on protocol adherence and the ability to enroll more patients to clinical trials with the capacity that we have today. So there's a question in the chat, I think from Jennifer. Do you want to just jump in live here, or would you like me to read it out for you?
Hi, is it regarding the data mappings question?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't tracking with everyone. So if there's more than one Jennifer, yeah, I'm just curious about any input or any insight, I guess, based on like data mappings and all of the testing on a per protocol basis, getting that legwork, that pre-activation. And then I guess any like downstream. So if there's any protocol amendments that impact the forms, from an Ignite standpoint and that data transfer process, how have sites been reacting and or managing? Have there been delays, etc.? It's open for comment.
I'm happy to get started on that's a loaded question. But yes, if there are protocol amendments or anything that would impact the ECRFs and require migrations and they would potentially impact the mappings for Archer. So we would need to build those in. And so for any post-production changes, there is already a process in place that Ignite has put together, and it's basically the site or sponsor would need to inform Ignite of those changes, and then we work together to work through like what are those changes, what if any code changes have to be implemented or retested, so forth, training if needed, and then we would then push those into production.
Okay, great. Looks like we're right at 3 o'clock. So I just want to thank you all for joining, and a special shout out to our panelists today who gave us quite a bit of information. I think to think about our contact information should be shared following the session, and it has been recorded in case you want to share with your colleagues. We'll leave that to Haley and Kate from AACI to help us distribute.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Alrighty. Take care.